5 scores! Rick Vaughn.
We decided to get ourselves back in the game again with our podcast.
Rick Vaughn, Gary Madden.
Probably the craziest story that you're ever going to hear about hockey.
We're going to be coming back to you on a regular basis.
You are listening to Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans of the United States and Newfoundland, and an extra big hello to Canadian servicemen overseas.
Welcome, everyone. Episode 106 of the Squid and Ultimate Leafs Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs Fan. Joining me as always, my winger, Ricky Squid Vibe. Squid, how are we keeping, my man?
Oh, I had to run errands today. My wife's downtown at the distillery section of Toronto, where the Christmas market is, with grandkids and daughter-in-law. And oh well.
Yeah, how'd you get out of that?
I hope she didn't take her credit card.
Well, you know what? You'll learn fast enough, okay?
Oh yeah.
Well, Squid, guess what? Our guest today was taken in 1986 draft by the Pittsburgh Penguins, a guy you're very familiar with. Enjoyed a 22-year pro career both in North America and Europe. Had the distinction, which you'll hear about, of playing for 4 NHL teams in one season. And today still plays lots of alumni games across the country with you. Please welcome Dave McLlwain. Dave, first off, thanks for joining us, and how you keeping?
Hey,
you know what? One of those teams that year was me in Buffalo.
That's correct.
Yeah, that was I get 2 weeks there, and Squid said, "Get this guy out of here." Good to see you guys.
Hey, so Dave, besides playing alumni games, how you keeping busy these days?
I still I work for a company in Toronto. We deal with security guards, so we look for manpower, different contracts with whether it's malls, construction sites, condos, wherever they need some security. So I've been doing that for the last 8 or 9 years, and we have a gravel business back here in Seaforth. I'm in Grand Bend, but it's about 30 minutes away. My dad's had the business for years, and my brother and I are kind of helping him out now as he's got a little older.
Fantastic. Well, you gave us a good lead in and a good segue into you were born in Seaforth, Ontario, which I must admit I had to look up. Now, I knew it was located in Southern Ontario, but It wasn't quite. Now, Squid, when you laugh at it, I'm sure you weren't sure either, okay? So
I knew where it was. You've
been through it a couple times, I think, on the way to Goddard, Squid.
Yeah.
But anyway, speak to growing up in the area and playing hockey.
Well, yeah, I think it is a small town, but if you look up other guys that have come from there, there's probably 7 or 8 guys that come out of there since I did in '87. My first year pro. Like there's many guys: Rem Murray, Boyd Devereaux, Mike Watt, Pat Murray. The O'Reilly boys started. Cal and Ryan both started in Seaforth, and there's many others in the area. They actually come up with a book of all the players out of Huron County is where we're actually located. But I think it's like any small town kid. You played hockey from pretty much when you come out of the womb. There was a stick in your hand, and whether it was mini sticks or getting on the ice or road hockey, which you don't see a lot of today, we did that all the time. And I think I was very fortunate because our house where we lived, the arena was maybe a block away. And I spent so many days there or hanging around with my dad, and his team would be playing, having some beers after the game, of course. And we would be out running around on the ice in our boots or whatever it was just to be out there. So it was always a bit of a rink rat when growing up, or looking for some ice, whether it's outdoor or anytime. You were always playing for, I don't know how, that's kind of what we did back then.
It's great.
Now, Dave, growing up in a small town like that, obviously I did as well. Maybe not quite as small as yours. But did you play for the Grey Bruce Highlanders or whatever they were called?
Well, they were back when I was in the minor hockey. We didn't really have the AAA system that they have now, and I think it was if I would have played, it would have been like the Huron Perth Lakers. I think they grab a certain district and take the top players with Goderich up to Palmerston to Stratford to Exeter area, and that wasn't really around when I was here. So I played at a level it was they called it double C, and it kind of went by the size of your population. And the farthest we traveled, I think, was maybe 25 minutes away. It was the Mitchell, Wingham, Clinton, and that was it. You knew those guys' families by the time you were done.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, because I don't think a lot of people realize, like when I was in Charlottetown playing, my biggest years of my minor hockey, there was no A, AA, or AAA. I mean, there was the house league, and then you tried out for the travel team, and if you made it, you would travel, and that was kind of the way it was. Like there was no A, AA, and AAA back then.
Yeah. So when you played, like what level was it out there? Because you had a bigger center.
Well, it would just be like regular. Pee Wee was 11 and 12, but if you were 9 or 10, which I was in Amherst, and I was able to make the Pee Wee team, you could play at 9 years old.
Yeah, and we did the same. Yeah.
So what you would do is they would go visit other places in the Maritimes for a weekend and play 2 games, and then maybe that other team would come and visit you later on in the season.
Right.
And then when it came down to the playoffs, you played in the provincial playdowns, and then the Atlantic Canada.
Yeah. We weren't able to get that far. Like it was either just Western Ontario. It was kind of, and you'd play in the OMHA also, but at our level of populations, kind of what we competed against. And there was always some good teams. We just didn't have a lot of players. You usually could barely put 3 lines together just from small communities. So there was a lot of ice time to go around. And then if you play, like you said, I was able to play up a couple levels. And then when I was 14 or 15, we have a junior D team, which is the size of the population, and started playing in that when I had to be 15, 16, I think at that.
Yeah, so I was going to ask about the C for Centurions.
Centenaires.
Centenaries? Yeah.
Yeah.
And at OHA,
that's the Centennial. So that was in North Bay.
That's North Bay. That was next. So that's where we were leading to. So how did you end up in North Bay?
Well,
I was Kitchener first, by the way.
Pardon me?
You went through Kitchener first, obviously.
Yeah, well, I was kind of a story. I was never drafted because of our centers. We never really had the scouts come to watch us. And that year after Junior D, I was planning to play Junior B in St. Mary's. And but it started at the draft. It's kind of a bit of a funny story. I always tell it. So we went to the draft, midget draft in Ontario for the major Junior A. I got invited. Guelph said, we're going to draft you in the 7th round. And there was this other kid that we competed against each other, Dave Hawkins out of Durham. Every year we were against each other. So it comes to the draft, 7th round, Guelph's turn to come. Sitting there waiting, all of a sudden they take this Dave Hopkins. So I'm just like, okay, maybe I'm going the 8th round, 9th round. Back then they had like 18 rounds. So I ended up sitting through the whole draft and never got drafted. It was the worst day ever. Monday comes around and we get a call from Kitchener Rangers. Said, Dave, we see you weren't picked up. We'd like to invite you to camp. And of course, we said sure, but I can't remember if Guelph ended up calling and invited us to camp. And my dad just told him, you know what, you can go, fly a kite. Basically, he was pretty pissed off, and as I was. So the whole plan was to play Junior B. So I went to the Rangers camp, did the whole 2-day, 48 hours in case I was thinking of college. Who knew? I didn't know what was going on. And so I picked up my bag and I was walking out of the rink, and the coach looks, he's like, his name was Tom Barrett at the time. And he said, where are you going? And we just sat down. He took us in and explained it. He said, you got a good chance of making this team. So took the bag back in and unloaded it, and the rest was history. Ended up making the team in Kitchener, and that year I come in, so there was some ice time. They had went to the Memorial Cup before. The year before it was in Kitchener. I think Ottawa won it. Played some I was 3rd, 4th line, 13 goals. Didn't get a lot of ice, but that was my draft year. And once again, I never got drafted because I was under the radar. They didn't know who I was, coming out of a small town. So the next year it started few games in October, and all of a sudden it was like a 3-for-4 deal. Kitchener and North Bay. Had to meet North Bay in Hamilton, and then lo and behold, we're back in Kitchener the next night with my new team. It was just first trade. You didn't know what was going on. So that night we went out with our because we were going to pack up and leave Saturday to go back to North Bay. Well, I'm with the two guys who get traded. No one wants to leave. Kitchener's a great place to play, and North Bay seems so far away, 4 hours. So we go home, and we're at my billet's place, and we call
And a lot colder.
A lot colder.
A lot colder, yes.
So we ended up calling the coach, and he answers, and we ended up hanging up. We're like, we didn't want to go. We wanted to tell him we didn't want to go, but we played 2 games already. Anyway, Saturday we ended up going up there. It was probably the best thing that happened to me for my career.
But think about this. Now when you're playing for Seaforth, we won't even attempt to butcher the name again. You're playing OHA D, Junior D.
Yeah.
That has to be the equivalent, I would say, what, minor midget, AAA?
There were some pretty good teams. Like, you get in these small towns, it's just where some of these guys played. So and Rick knows, you go to some tournaments and you get some guys that are decent hockey players. They just never wanted to, or the opportunity maybe wasn't there, but they could all play. So I was playing against, I remember I was young and the guy was 20, he had a kid, married, and I'm just trying to figure it all out. And local town, like that's.
No, where I'm going with that is, okay, so you're playing in small town, OHA Junior D, and you're playing against guys older and your same age. So it's at least the equivalent of like a AAA team.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You score 42 goals in 33 games and you have 36 assists, 78 points in 33 games. I would suspect you should get drafted.
Yeah, well, it just didn't happen. For some reason, I think scouts had told us that.
Hey, well, Dave, it's just like the Easter Seals tournaments. They don't do their pre-scouting because they don't know you're the fastest guy of all of us.
Yeah, maybe, but it was. I guess one scout had said, he just said, you know what? Why do we want to go and watch one guy in a small town in a team where we can go to the city and we can see like 30 guys? So that was kind of their philosophy. But after I come out, it sure opened up some eyes for some people, and ended up, like the rest of the guys. Not that they could have done it on their own, but I think people started taking notice of Seaforth and the kids that have come out of there.
I think that was I like that what you just said there, because it did bring attention to the scouts in the OHL that, hey, there are places in Ontario that have good hockey players, but they're small communities, and we need to go and start looking at them.
Right. But the thing what changed, Rick, though, is that AAA came in, though, like the Lakers, where they took the top players. So those teams were getting recognized. I maybe would have went and played on that if possible. Maybe my dad wouldn't. I don't know. But there's a lot of traveling with that when you play in these small cities and have to go to. But they would have been in the big tournaments where the scouts are.
So now talk about your finally get settled in North Bay, your draft year, when you finally do get drafted. Leading up to that, did you get in any inquiries from teams that may take you?
My draft year, no. I was just kind of always under the radar, and I was like, I played junior A. A midget, I'm like, I don't know if I can play or not. So then you get in there and you start playing, you're okay. Then I get up to North Bay and I had 70 points or did okay. And all of a sudden, third year I get there. So after North Bay, Bert Templeton was my coach, and he was really, I think he made some calls and said, this guy has potential to play. And then the next year I was second in the OHL scoring, and Bert took me to the World Junior, which really helped. And all of a sudden you go from Junior D, and 2 or 3 years later you're playing in the World Junior, which if I thought about it all the time, maybe it wouldn't have happened, but it just kind of went, all right, let's go to this one. And then you just kind of easy through, where I didn't have a lot of pressure to accelerate or have that when you were 11 or 12.
Well, we're going to get to the World Junior, and that you obviously picked one to go to for the ages. And maybe you want to talk about that one, being a part of that whole scenario.
Yeah, it's kind of one, like when we do all these tournaments, it's one story that people always ask you about. And, that they turn the lights out, right? Well, they did turn the lights out, but you could kind of see out there, but they didn't know how to stop it. I think these are the 5 guys are start, and it kind of pans out, and you start seeing the benches come out there. So that's number 6. That was Jason or Huffman. And Mike Keen's out there. Theo Fleury, Everett Senepass started it. They were on the ice. I shouldn't say they started it, but they were out there. There's Mike Keen on the fighting there. Steve Chase on number 4.
Yeah.
So Sean Simpson was in that.
What were the players saying on the bench while this was all going on? Were you
Well,
guys...
I was kind of right by their bench, and they're just waiting, and all of a sudden 2 Russian guys, from what I remember, I was right there. They jumped over the boards and they took off. I don't know who it was. So there you can see guys starting to come, obviously. And once their guys went, our guys took off too.
So, like, what, like, you know, it looked to me like the Russians were playing almost like they were trying to entice you guys into this because they were playing basically for nothing.
Yeah,
and did you guys sense all this?
Who knows, right? Like, I ended up talking to some of the guys, like McGillney was there, and Konstantinov, Davidoff. I played with him in Winnipeg or Ottawa, and no one really planned it. I think Jay didn't realize what happened, and just they were taking off and going out there. So we had to win by 5 or 6 goals. It was a round robin tournament, not like it is today. So we had to win by 5 goals. I think we were up, I don't know, what was it, 6-1 or we were on our way. It was only halfway through the second period. So we had a good opportunity to win the gold medal, but we didn't, you know, and then this started separating all this, and then it started up again. Some guys got going around at each other, and sure enough, it started up again for another 10 or 15 minutes. Finally, we got into the dressing rooms, and we had to sit there. I remember Greg Hoggood's nose was over here, and he got head-butted up from the bottom, and some guys were beat up pretty good. And we just sat. We didn't know what was going on. All of a sudden, they come in. I guess the IHF had a meeting because it was the last game, and they just decided we're going to kick everybody out. You're suspended. The games are suspended. They called in the Army. I just remember walking out to our bus in a line with the military and another line to their bus right beside us. We got on the bus right beside each other. We're looking at them. They're looking at us. And then we had an escort right out of the country, right to the Austrian border. And we were flying out of Vienna the next morning. We were supposed to go to a banquet. Some guys were getting some awards, but that never happened. It was a pass directly out of the country.
What were the players all saying? Like, you guys must have been in shock.
Yeah, I was just kind of in shock, and no one really knew what to think. And we didn't know, obviously, no social media or the access to what was going on back home. We didn't know what the country was feeling like. And then we showed up at the airport, and a lot of families were there, or billets. Some guys were taken off out west, and it was a good reception, I guess. But, you know, and obviously Don Cherry was in our corner, and there was a big uproar about that with him and
Brian Williams.
Yes. So it was what a lot of people don't know either is we ended up getting medals from Harold Ballard. Obviously, I'm sure.
Oh, that's right.
That's right.
They were personalized medals. They're probably nicer than the ones we would have got from the World Junior. Personalized number each guy, and it was pretty special. And yeah, it's not the real one, but it was a tournament that I guess won't be forgotten.
Well, that would be Harold that would give you guys medals because you beat up the Russians. He hated the Russians.
I'm just going to say that.
Anytime I think was that before one of our games in Toronto?
I think, you know what? I think some guys did that were close by. I couldn't make it because I was in North Bay. But some guys I vaguely remember that were there. I think Ivan Korobel, he was playing with the Marlies at the time, and so he would have been close. Guelph guys maybe come in. I forget exactly.
Yeah. Now I got to ask you one question about North Bay. Did you play with Kevin White?
No, I didn't. How old would he be? My age?
Gosh, I don't know. Probably in his 40s.
Yeah, I was probably gone by then. I don't remember that name.
It might have been after that. I'm not sure. Well, actually, he got drafted by Windsor. He played in Windsor.
Yeah, I was there in like 86.
He was there when
87.
Graves and Smith,
Adam Graves?
and
No, maybe it was
Motor
just
City
after me.
Smitty, and
Well, no,
so that would have been after you then.
Yeah, or before. I don't know. Can't remember. That doesn't ring a bell.
So, Dave, talk about your first pro camp.
Oh, first pro camp. We usually go in. I know I was going back. My ticket was already set, but I just remember going in, and Mario was there, and he was the up and coming star, obviously, and. I do remember a story. I walked in and we see Ron Duguay at different spots, and he'd just come to Pittsburgh for a tryout. I think he played that year. But I walked in, I'm like, man, this guy's cool. He's got the baby blue khaki pant or baby blue pants on and the pink polo shirt, and he's in there with the hair. And obviously, Viver knows the luck he always had, and I was just like, wow, this guy's the coolest thing. And training camp was hard. Everything, you're with a lot of younger guys, and that year I left. Next year, I didn't know how it was going to go, other than when I passed at the border, I drove down, and my visa was to make more than 50 grand. So you're probably going to be I didn't realize this. And the other guy who was with me was Brad Aiken, and he was on a different visa. So he knew he was going to the minors before he even got to camp, which is kind of tough to take. But anyways, camp was tough. I remember, and just trying to get my game on. And I got to Pittsburgh after a big offensive year in the OHL, but is kind of put in a role of third line checking. We had Mario, Dan Quinn, so there wasn't a lot of room or ice time when Mario, and obviously he's going to swallow up a lot of that center ice time, which was I should have come in
30 minutes, probably 30 out of 60.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it's your line, and then he's up, he's coming off, and your guys are just coming off. It's like, oh, there goes another lot of shift. But I wasn't able to tell him to get off the ice. So
well, you weren't getting a lot of power play minutes.
Yeah.
Not a lot of power play minutes with that lineup.
No, I never really got many power play minutes there at all. It was always penalty killing.
Well, Mario, okay, so you walk into him, you've heard all about him, you see him. What was it him that made him so special when you saw him on the ice finally up and close and personal?
Yeah, so the second camp was the year I was done junior. Could have went to overage, but I didn't. It was the Canada Cup year. So we were all waiting at camp for him to come back from 87 Canada Cup, and just the aura, he carried himself like he was good. He was confident, wasn't cocky, but he was confident. And you could just see like on the ice how he skated. And I said this, and Rick can justify or verify this, that he's probably one of the fastest guys that I played with. You wouldn't see it, you wouldn't think it, but when you do laps or skating at the end of practice and try to keep up with him, and I thought I was pretty fast, he was effortless, like long strides, like his legs were like giraffe legs, but he was very underrated that way. I thought you never heard about his speed, you always heard about his hands. He seemed lazy, but it was just I think he could skate effortlessly, and people thought it was being lazy or whatever, but my legs would be going 100 miles an hour, and his would just be like long strides, but twice the distance.
When you're 6'6" or 7 and you got those long legs, it sometimes seems like they're not moving, but they're flying.
Right, exactly. Like it's people didn't think that, and he was just
Frank Mahovlich. Frank Mahovlich was the same thing. They always accused him of not working hard enough. It was just that was the way his body went.
Yeah.
And I remember Mario's first year when he came into the league, they didn't make the playoffs, so I was at the World Championships in Czechoslovakia, I believe it was, and he wanted to go home. He was homesick, and we convinced him to stay, and he ended up winning the tournament and scoring. And so that's how good Mario Lemieux was, I'll tell you.
Yeah, like there was times I was on the bench and he would do something. It was almost like you're a fan. You just wanted to stand up and clap. Like it was so good. And then you're kind of like, oh yeah, we're on we're on the bench here. But it was just sometimes he was at another level. And he was one guy that I always talk about with if he could play in today's game. I know you can't cross them over, and each era was each era, and this was different. But him in today's game, and without the hooking and holding, and I'm sure there's a lot of guys that maybe would have did that, but him, because I just saw what he did with 3 guys on his back. Imagine if he had nobody on his back, right? Like he was, hook and hold. That was like Viber knows that. It's and there's many guys like probably did that. Pat LaFontaine or different guys that were really good that would have benefited. He did amazing, obviously, and if he was healthy, I think he would have had crazy numbers too.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, especially the difference in the games. I mean, I don't think you can really compare them.
Right.
But you look at the different eras and, our era where, well, I don't know, you probably worked out more than most of us, but, we would work out a little bit during the summer, not a whole lot.
Yeah.
And, now it's an 11-month-a-year job. I mean, they take maybe a month off and then they're right back at it. The equipment is much different today, obviously. So, I think when you're looking at the top players and guys just can score goals and that, I think they all equal out pretty much.
Yeah, and they probably would have scored then. Now you're right. It's
because don't forget the goalies are better. The equipment's a lot bigger.
Yeah, so it kind of balances. It's probably a good way to think about it. And
So Dave, for you, your first year in the league, what was the biggest adjustment you had to make from junior to play at the National Hockey League level?
Well, I think it was the everyday. In junior played every day, but it was tough, and guys were bigger, stronger. I think the game was played the same. You just got to everything happened quicker, faster. The level was just up, and you didn't have maybe a bad line. There just seemed to be better players on the ice all the time. You get the odd. Back then, we'd have the 4th line where there were some fighters on it, but normally they could hold their own and do their part. But I think it was trying to get the consistency of it's a job, and you got to take every shift. You couldn't take time off. You had to be ready. You couldn't, if you messed up or something, you're sitting out, and maybe the ice time, you come from junior, you're out every shift, every other shift, and power play, penalty. So you just had to adjust that way, adjust your game a little bit. And be more aware. It was learning the first year. I don't think I scored till like the 11th game when I did. So it was getting a little frustrating because you used to score all the time.
Yeah.
Well, you're
that 66 guy.
How hard was it for guys back then, that had prolific junior seasons and careers, but you have to adjust to a completely different role? How hard was that to transition to that?
Well, yeah, it was difficult because you're used to doing this one play, or I was kind of known as I could play both ends of the ice, but you had that offensive part. So I was trying to find that balance where I had to go out, and usually you're playing against a top first or second line, and you're kind of aware, you got to watch them, and you kind of put your offensive game back a little bit, which is hard. You got to be very aware defensively. I think a good 3rd line guy or 4th are able to contribute both ways. You just have to be. You can't take the chances like a 1st line center or a 2nd line center that they're going back out there. That's not my job, but you really want to do it when you score it all the time. So then you get put in that role in the NHL. It's like, oh, he's a checker. Well, if you look at the other stat, you could play. So every time I got put in that situation, I could usually score. Like it was, I went to the minors a little bit, ended up, we won the Turner Cup there, but scored a lot of goals. But you go to Pittsburgh, and all of a sudden you're back in the check and roll. So it's kind of hard to, you just got to play. That's the way it was. You adjusted.
I am so glad I didn't have to go through that transition.
Yeah.
Well,
the minors. The offensive.
Listen, we've talked about this a lot in the show about how guys, like one of the biggest things for hockey players coming up is star player all the way up, regardless of coming from a small town. You're always probably one of the highlight players on your team. You get to junior, you're a star player. You arrive at that first NHL camp and you walk in that room and every guy in the room has got the same numbers as you do.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're not the only guy. Like everybody else has done exactly what you've done to get there. So the guy that can separate himself from the pack and establish himself is the real mental challenge. Wouldn't you agree?
I would say so. And maybe it worked out better that I was able to get in that defensive role. And because I said in Pittsburgh, the offensive part was pretty, the ice time was eaten up by Mario, and Danny Quinn was there, and those guys were putting up good numbers. And so you just kind of had to find your role. And, you don't think you're ever going to get traded, but I did 2 years later, and kind of got put in a role where I could do more offensively, and was able to score, and still didn't play a lot of power play, but I played a lot. So I think that helps, and the confidence, and kind of get you back to where, I still could score. You're okay.
Yeah.
So, it was good that I went there and was able to get in that role. Still kind of a third line center, but PK all the time, and regular shift. So it did help.
Well, was there a point where you were coming in Pittsburgh, like you're up and down, back and forth with the eye in the National Hockey League a few times? Were you getting a little bit frustrated because you weren't getting that full-time regular role? And so maybe the trade was a better thing for you because, let's face it, Danny Quinn and Mario Lemieux aren't going anywhere.
Right. I didn't ask for anything. I think it was the second year it was funny. The first year I was in the NHL pretty much the whole year. And then the second year I go back to camp thinking, okay, I'm going to move up the ladder here. A week in camp and I was gone to the minors. I was still on a 2-week, and they got Esposito come in and Gene Ubriaco, and they had their own guys already. So I was still on a 2-way, able to go to the minors, and that's where I was up and down all year. Had a really good year down there. We won the Turner Cup, great playoffs, and then obviously as a young kid, you don't realize how many scouts are there watching the minor leagues to make trades to try to find those different guys.
Was that the Chicago Wolves? Was John Anderson there?
No, I was with Muskegon. We had actually BJ McDonald was our coach that year, and we had Mark Recchi was there, Kevin Stevens, just really good players and good goalie. Frank Pietrangelo was our goalie, and and we had a mix. Some guys were Pittsburgh farm team or under contract, and that's when they had some just Muskegon guys. Jock Callender, right? Like Jock was a legendary IHL, and we just had a good team. Like I said, other teams are watching, and it was hard that mentally that year because you play well, and BJ always said, just be the best player down here, because they phone and they ask who's the best player, who's playing the best. So you bring him up, but then the problem is you get brought up, you get 3 shifts a game, like, you didn't do anything. We're going to send you back down here. I'm like, well, what do you want me to do in 3 shifts? I just get my feet wet. So that part was tough with that, but anyway, that's part of hockey. Every guy's got a sad story, whatever you want to call it.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because I do remember, we only dressed 19 when I first started playing. So there was 2 extra forwards. Well, if a forward went down, they'd call up the best player on the American League team or the leading scorer, which usually was Bruce Boudreau. Well, he'd have to play with those 2 guys. And both of those guys were usually tough guys that weren't that talented. So he'd play 9 games, get 3 points or 2 points, and they go, well, you didn't produce, you're going back down. Well, what the heck is he supposed to do? I mean,
exactly.
And then it transitions. You look at today's game, if a top 6 forward goes out, they bring up a top 6 forward. If a bottom 6 forward goes down, they bring up a guy that's used to playing that role from the minor league team. Things have switched quite a bit, but that was the case back then. You're right.
They put you in a role to succeed. I think now that's
correct. Yeah. In the old days, you had to prove yourself to earn the spot, and today they put you, and so you're almost put in a position that you're going to fail,
right?
And then they're going to say you're going to be spun. Whereas today, you put in a position to succeed.
Yeah,
and
it's yours to lose if you do, right? Like that's So.
Well, I mean, we've talked about Gabby. I mean, when they were going through that struggle, that line, remember when it was McDonald, Sittler, and Thompson, and all of a sudden, what if Gabby been put in there when they were having trouble been putting that line together? What if he'd been put with McDonald and Thompson? Who knows what could have happened? Life could have changed for both. I mean, Sittler's a good player. He's obviously going to produce, but how do you know life doesn't change? They've said that one opportunity. So that's back in those days. Well, Squid used to see it all the time, and you were you talked about, Dave, the two-way contract. Squid, that drove him crazy because that used to just cost guys all the time. And that, poor guys got sent down because they could get sent down.
Right. For sure. Even now he can clear through waivers. So he goes a little different that way, but two-way. Yeah. And it was a big deal there because it was a big difference in pay at that time. Now I think guys are making great money, even though they're in the minors. So is it that? Yeah. You never like getting sent down no matter what. That was kind of.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, although the one time I did go down was I wasn't playing in Buffalo when McLlwain took over for Rick Dudley. And so 3 months I didn't play. So I went to Jeremy and I said, send me to Rochester at the deadline because Tampa and Ottawa were coming in the next year. And I figured I need to play. So anyway, I had a great time in Rochester. We went to the semifinals. It took me a week or two to get into it, the flow, but finally I did, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. There's not the pressure. Yeah, it was fun in the minors, but it's not kind of like where you wanted to be. You wanted to work to get out of there, so that was kind of a bit of motivation.
Well, Dave.
Yeah, well, I was on a one-way, so I just said, send me down. I got to play.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, you got a one-way contract, Squid. That's a little different.
Yeah, I eventually did get one. Like I think my second contract, so it was a little bit of relief that way. But
now, Dave, the question you get asked all the time: 1991-92, very memorable one for you. Mm-hmm. Land you in a crazy record books with three other guys. By the way, you weren't the only one. There's three other guys that have done this too. Walk us through that crazy season.
Just to verify that, I'm the only guy that played in every division. Those other guys played.
That's even better.
But mine was every division. I went from the Smythe to the Adams to the Patrick to the Norris. So that is the record. That is the record. But yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't know. I started my third year in Winnipeg, and I thought it was going well. I'd goal and assist 3 games, and we're off to San Jose, and come in after warm up, and the trainer's like, Mac, you're not going to play tonight. You're not dressing. I'm like, what? So obviously the rumors start because you're regular and sat in the press box all night. People are talking Chicago, this and that. And then I got a phone call at 7 a.m. and it was the GM, and he said, yeah, we've traded you to Buffalo, but you got to meet them in Quebec City. So went all the way down to San Jose, all the way back over to Ottawa with Gord Donnelly, and met the team in Quebec. And I remember I had a penalty shot the first game there, and it was just like an awkward game, like different gloves, new pants, and new teammates, and it was just like a whirlwind trying to get in there. I remember hitting the post. I can't remember who the goalie was. Cloutier, maybe? Maybe. Anyway, and then ended up there for a couple of weeks, and geez, you can dig some pictures out here.
That's Glenn Dreyfus. He does an unbelievable job finding this stuff.
Yeah, I don't see a lot in a Sabre. They had to be quick to get me in a Sabre uniform. I was only there 2 weeks. Then I got to Buffalo, and 2 weeks in, and my car, my furniture, everything was showing up. Signed the lease Thursday night. Go to practice Friday. Going out there, and all of a sudden I see Benny Hogue walking in and Uwe Krupp coming back in, and I'm just about out, and McLlwain says, hey, Dave, just sit down here for a minute. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? So I sit there, I go in and go, yeah, we're trading you to the Islanders. So I was back on the lady ripped up my lease for me, and the furniture just kept going down the turnpike to Long Island, and get to the Long Island, and there was like 5. We'd set how many guys? 2 from Chicago, Adam Creighton and Stevie Thomas got traded the same day, and 4 of us from Buffalo. So there was like 6 guys in the lineup the next Saturday night, and it was just a whirlwind. And of course they're telling you, well, you went to Buffalo to go to the island. Who knows, whatever it was, and ended up in the island, 52 games. It was okay, but it was kind of sat out a couple games. And then Ken Baumgartner ended up getting in a fight with Al Arbor. He put him out at the end of the game. And Bomber hadn't played a shift, and he fights Dave Brown and breaks his orbital bone. Well, he's pissed, obviously, that he did that to him. So then he wants traded. I'll say a quick, the trade from the Islanders to Toronto. So I'm at home. We have a game that night. It's 2:45. And my roommate was Jeff Finley, and Don Maloney phoned. He says, Dave, we've traded. We need to get a hold of Jeff. He's in the lineup. We've made a trade today. So I'm thinking, okay, someone else. And then he's like, well, by the way, you're in the trade also. And I was just, why the F me? Now I'm frustrated. And it's like, yeah, you got to be in a plane a couple hours with Bomber. You're meeting Toronto and Minnesota. And that's kind of where I ended up in Toronto that year. So it was a long year. I was pretty happy to see the season end. And I was at a golf tournament in Toronto that summer. They always had the Bell Mobility. I think Viver's probably there. I think I played with 32 of the 34 guys that were at the tournament that year. Like a bunch of guys come up from Buffalo. They're all the crew from Toronto that live or whatever, Winnipeg guys. It was just every time you're down a hole, you're taught, hey, how's it going? Good to see you. You know, like you're just like everybody was there. But yeah, it was a crazy year, and away you go.
Yeah, it's I remember one year in Toronto, we had 49 guys in our lineup in one season, which was absolutely insane. Like, I mean, it was like a revolving door. I mean, guys
were coming up,
guys were getting traded. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Now, Dave, talk about the experience in Toronto. You're from outside of the city, but you must have known how this team, with the regard this team is held in around the area and Leaf Nation. And when you came in and you put that jersey over your head, was it as you expected being a Maple Leaf?
You know what? I'll be honest. You really notice it when you leave Toronto after playing there, right? And people in Southwestern Ontario, there's so many Leaf fans, and everywhere you go, and whether you're, Rick Vive or myself, they know, real fans know everybody that played on that team. It was special. One place it ended, the season, it ended well. I got to play in Toronto, and I grew up watching them. You're correct. I knew all these guys and watched Rick and so on, the older players. And it was special. The next year, it was going okay. I ended up kind of in and out of the lineup, scored some goals, but it was tough. But we had a good team, so you just kind of try to be that good teammate. And we ended up having a good run in the playoffs. I only played, I think it was 4 games out of the 21. So, I wish I had the ice, as everybody, you want more ice time and wanted to contribute more than what you could. But when you're called upon, you just kind of had to fill in that role.
How did Europe come about?
Well, it was, how'd that go? I ended up going to Ottawa on the waiver draft there a couple of years. The last couple of years, what happened? I signed with the Islanders, and I said, if you're going to send me down, can you send me to Cleveland? I played there before. I kind of know it. And that year I ended up with the Islanders, maybe 3 weeks to a month, but mainly in Cleveland. We had a good team. So it was fun. Then you could kind of see it was going to be tough to try and get another contract or be up and down. And the IHL, they were actually paying pretty good, but Europe was a situation that my agent always thought I would do well over there. So I ended up signing to go over to Germany. I guess I was 30 at the time. And yeah, I can honestly say I didn't love it my first year, because I think you have to really immerse yourself into the game and the culture, and it's a big change. Whether you play, the game's played the same, but there's a lot of differences. Bigger ice, the schedule is different. You practice a lot more. You wanted to play more, and and I was kind of thinking, well, will I get to go back? Is there an opportunity to go back? So you're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I still played okay, so it wasn't that situation. But the next year we ended up having an opportunity to go to Bern, Switzerland. And after that, you get there and you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to be here. I can play here. And you just got to, like I said, make the best of it, and you got to enjoy it and have the right mindset, but you still have to play. It's not an easy game over there. There's many good players over there. So what happens, a lot of guys do come over and think it's easy, and then they're gone by Christmas time. So you got to have the right attitude and play hard like you would anywhere else.
Well, talk to that, Dave. Like, okay, for people that don't understand, I think when you went over, there was a limit of what, 2 imports per team, maybe?
Yeah, well, honestly, my first year, it really opened up. They were in, it was a DEL at the time. You're able to have 16 imports. And so I was over there. There was Mark Lamb, Dean Evison, Mike Bullard, Gino Cavallini, Greg Brown. We had a lot of guys, good team. And so that was fine. But then I went to Switzerland where you're right, we're only allowed 3 imports.
Mm-hmm.
So in Switzerland, there's a little more. You could never do enough. Switzerland, like it was, and it went well there, but still at the end, I needed players to play with. I'm not like a guy that some over there could go end to end and score a goal. It's maybe I wasn't the flashiest, but you get a point a game. It still wasn't enough. But the opportunity come to go to Cologne, Germany, and ended up there for 9 years. Just a great situation. Brand new arena at the time, 18,000 practice rink. So this is close to North American as you could get, but they slowly started taking the imports away. So I think by the end we had 10 or 11, just because it started to hurt the German hockey's development of some of their players. So I think that's where it's at now over there. So you did have some imports, whether they're Swedish or Czech or Canadian, American, whatever it may be.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get at with that is that if you don't perform to what their expectations are because you're an import, you're gone.
Oh yeah, they're always looking. You're always wondering who's coming in, and you got to play well or you're fired. I mean, just simple as that.
Well, yeah, and earlier, I'm a little older than you guys, but in the days when guys were going to Europe in my era, they'd get points bonuses in their contracts, and what they would do is they'd get sat. So if the team got up, they'd get sat so they couldn't reach those goals. And then they'd say to them at the end of the year, well, you haven't performed, so we're not renewing you.
Yeah, well, that's a couple double-edged sword there because they don't want to look bad, but I'm sure it happened. There was some shady stuff over there for sure. But you got to perform or it's done. I always tell the story, and Mike Johnson will tell you this story. He came over to play in Cologne with Todd Warner and I were last 2 years in Cologne together. And he said, well, Mike Johnson, I think he could come over. So we brought Mike over, but Mike was that guy who was like, when's the next break? When can we go skiing? And he wasn't fully immersed into it. And they got rid of him by Christmas time, unfortunately. Like it was, and I like Mike and he could have helped us, but just mentally wasn't
prepared
there. Yeah.
Now talk about the fans.
The fans are crazy. I played with some really good talent, like Bern, Switzerland. Everyone will talk about that if you go there. There's a couple exhibition games there this year with the NHL. They're probably 14,000 people get in there. Cologne was 18,000. I think we averaged maybe 13.5, 14. Certain games would be sold out with a derby game against Dusseldorf or something like a Toronto, Montreal game, playoffs. So the fans they're banging drums, singing an hour before. It's like soccer. You listen, watch soccer. It's the same. They had the 2 ends in Cologne. They would always stand, and the other seats around like normal. But they had chants going from warm up to right to the end. Like they were passionate hockey fans, and it was an experience. But you leave there, and my friends come over, whoever, they were like, leave with a headache. Like if you're not used to it, it's loud and it's a party.
Oh wow! Well, how about the advertising on the sweaters? Like I'm looking at those pictures.
Oh God, yeah.
You know, like what is that? Like that looks like a walking billboard, basically.
A skating billboard is what it was. But that's kind of how they were able to pay us, right? Like they sold that advertisement. Every space they could put something that they could make money off of. Like we got the grocery store there. There's a beer on there. There's the Toyota's our car. Ryan Energy is an energy thing, not even like you don't have your logo a little bit there, and then insurance company on the helmets. I remember in Switzerland they put these stickers on our skates, on our sticks. Finally, like we can't put these here. It's like where your hand goes, and they thought, well, we'll just stick one on a stick. Well, you know what you're like is that we're fussy with our sticks, so that didn't last too long. So if there was a spot, they put it on.
Hey, the NHL started that way too.
They've started that in the NHL now.
Yeah,
so
a little bit. I think a little bit isn't.
Do you
bad.
think
like
they'll ever get even close to what they have in Europe?
I don't think so, because I think they can make so much money on their boards and the way they digitalize the boards now. They're changing those all the time.
Yeah.
And now before they switch them in the period, which some they do still, but some boards are digital, these newer rinks that they're putting everyone, if you look the next commercial, it's different.
Well,
So
that's not
I
that. The
think-
TV does that.
Right, or the team, whoever it is. But I don't think I like the classic jerseys now. Yeah, you see the milk on there. It's not too bad, or the helmets, what a TikTok, whatever they get on. It's a little bit subtle. That's not too bad. Who knows how much they're going to go, but I think it's pretty classic to leave it the way it is.
I think you're right. I actually absolutely agree with you. But on the other hand, if that cap keeps going up and gets close to 100 million, they're going to have to find different ways to make more money.
Make more revenue. You're right. Who knows? Never
Well,
say never.
betting.
We didn't think anything would be on there, but now there is.
Well, there'll be more betting sites.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Dave, something about the European game that would surprise the listeners.
Well, I told these people ask me, they say it's so fast and this and that, bigger rinks, but I find it kind of slows the game down, because a lot of times you just come back to the middle and everyone's outside. You're flipping it around on the outside, but not really penetrating the middle as much. I found you beat a guy out of the corner. Well, another guy can bite because it's farther from the corner or the boards to get to the net, where our rink's over here with the 85 feet wide. You take a step off, it's a shot. Where there, you're another 8 feet back if you want to shoot from there. So in a way, it looks bigger players. I like the rink the way it is, and I think they're not going to change it. I think they're changing over there to get back to like our rinks is what I have read. So it looks guys that skate around, but they're skating around the outside doing a lot of nothing, right? And you can't really jump at guys, because if you do, they just go by you, right? So there's so much room. Happy medium in the middle, maybe. I don't know.
So now, life as a Canadian playing on some of these clubs, how is that? Like, are there any perks for you, like restaurants and stuff like that?
Well, they do look after us, right? We get, you show up, you have your car, your apartment, all that stuff is paid for. It is, everyone thinks it's tax-free. Somebody pays a tax on your salary, and that's usually the team, because then they can write this stuff off. Just have to show the tax is paid somewhere. I claimed in Canada, keep things straight. Just that you got to make sure enough tax was taken off. So it's pretty simple, pretty straight up. There was some shady stuff when I first went over there in years, but I think everybody started cleaning it up because they were getting checked and audited and all this stuff. So it's pretty much by the book now.
Now, what about the socializing amongst the players? Were the players good like that? Well, when you
the guys were great. I found Switzerland a little different. They were tough to get in, but at the time I was married, my wife, we didn't have kids, so we were going out a lot. So we were with them a lot, and we actually got in their circles. They involved us in a lot of their events or family stuff. So I think if you're going socializing, they are. In Germany, I think there were so many imports. Everyone was just it worked out fine, and the communication was pretty good. All younger people speak English, just because that's what they learn in school. I was a little stubborn at the start, and eventually I went to school, year 5. I just kept thinking I wasn't going to be there that long, and I could pick a little bit up, but I wasn't picking anything up, and eventually went to school and got the basics and the numbers, and just you could communicate. My verbs were all over the place, but as long as you put in an effort to try to speak, they were happy with that.
That was like me when I went to Sherbrooke when I was 17, trying to learn French, and it was like very, very difficult. And the ironic thing about that is that in June 8th, I'll be going into the Quebec Majors Junior League Hall of Fame.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. And there's 7 other guys going in, and they're all French.
Well,
so I'm going to be the only guy speaking it. Thank God it's in Sherbrooke, because it's in the eastern townships where there's a lot of English people. So maybe that'll help me. Yeah,
well, good luck in that French speaking. Make sure you get some video of that.
Well, I'm going to have one last paragraph will be in French. I'll have to go to Danny LaRue's house for probably about 4 days in a row to figure out how to.
Yeah, that'd be
say
a good ending for sure.
Well, I remember the Seinfeld episode where Kramer, what's his face? Newman stands behind Kramer telling him what to say. Maybe you get Dandy to stand behind you, hide behind you, can mouth his words.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Good idea.
Now, David, just got a couple minutes left at the end. You've been great so far to spend this time with us. Some of the leaders you play with, besides Mario, guys like Paul Coffey, Dale Howard-Chuck, and another guy that we've spoken about many times who we are just shocked he's not in the Hockey Hall of Fame, Pierre Turgeon. Talk about playing with those guys and what made them so special.
Well, I think I was fortunate enough to play with many great players. You mentioned many there. And I think Vira will say the same. One guy that was underrated, not underrated, maybe just didn't get noticed as much, was Dale Howard-Chuck. And great teammate, great guy on and off the ice. But he was very deceptive. Didn't seem like a great skater, but he was still fast, and he had hands like a magician. Like, he was so good. You learn different things from him, how to conduct yourself, carry yourself. But there was a lot of guys that you looked at as leaders and what you could take from different guys being a young guy, just whether they were third or fourth line, just kind of becoming a professional. And, even in Toronto the year I was still 24-5, and we had an older team. You still kind of pick up different stuff from different guys. And I went to Ottawa and was one of the older guys the next year. So you try to take what you have and learn and try to pass it on. And then we had the younger team coming into Ottawa with Alexander Daigle and Yashin, which, had kind of helped Alexei along the way. And he was 18. So yeah, I think you had to pick up stuff from all of them, all great players. Like you said, Pierre Turgeon, just special. First, was he second overall? I think he was, but either could have went first, him and Shanny. But you just learn. Everyone's got a special talent, and how it can imply into your game or on ice, off ice, whatever you could take. That's what you did.
It's great.
So a lot of kids coming in at 18 years old. I'm sure you probably you would have played with guys 18.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them come in and they play well, but you look at the Shane Wright situation right now, where, he's not playing hardly at all in Seattle. Then he gets sent to the American League for a conditioning stint, which likely will lead him going to the World Juniors more than likely.
Yeah.
Would you like to see the rules change so that a Canadian kid, if he's drafted in the first round, can be sent to the minors and play in the American League? Do you think that would help a lot of players?
If they totally exhausted the junior level, that they can't play there anymore. Like, he's been there 4 years already, right? Like, if he went back to junior, like, he come in was he an exempted kid?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Right. So he's been there a long time, and can he develop anymore, or do you just kind of get complacent? I think certain situations it'd be okay to put them in the minors, and I think it had a lot to do with different guys' personalities too. Like, some guys can handle that 18-year-old role, and some guys can't. And they got to be patient and know that it could be a bit of a growing part of a year. If even you look back at Joe Thornton there, he came in as an 18-year-old, but didn't really light it up or wasn't on fire till later on. And it takes sometimes guys to develop and mature and all that stuff. But I think it would be in American League, they can hone their skills down there and play that maybe not the highest level, but still a good level other than junior, like you said.
Well, they're going to play a lot more too. They're going to play in all situations. And because right now, if you're a European player, you can go to the American League at 18 years old or 19 years old. But a guy like Wright, who, like I say,
it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense to me why there's two different rules for the different players. I know they're trying to project junior hockey more than likely, but here's a kid who played 4 years already, or 5, whatever the heck it is. They should allow him, being picked as high as he was, to go play and get his game back playing in the American Hockey League.
Yeah. Maybe they could throw in, if you're a first rounder, you could.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah.
A second rounder, they think we won't send American. That would hurt the junior. But if there's the odd first rounder that could benefit from it, I think everyone else should go back to junior. And there's not that many to make this step at 18 anyway, like that.
Yeah, that would be a good role if you're a first rounder, or if you've played so many games of junior to get over the hurdle. You know, if you've played 100 games or whatever the number is, 180 games, and you can make the jump. But that first round, we've talked about this a lot because, you know, the development, Wright's a perfect example.
But he's not playing.
They're circumventing the rules slightly because they're going to allow to send him for a 2-week conditioning stint to the American Hockey League, and that's going to come up right a week before Team Canada. So it looks like that's kind of the plan.
Right. I think they were smart that way, and
that's a good move.
Yeah.
And by the way, the team's playing very good, so it's not like he's playing on a lousy team and not playing.
Yeah.
No, that's true, but at the same time, you're what was he, 4th or 5th overall? I mean, you can't play on that on a second-year team in the National Hockey League. I know they're playing well, but you know, come on.
You think he could, but maybe just that's a big jump, and
or is that the coach? Or is that the coach maybe trying to save his job by not playing a less experienced guy over a more experienced guy?
Yes, I'm sure there's a lot of factors.
A lot of factors. Well, listen, guys, Dave, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Mike.
Been great today. Great stories. We'll see you around the rink, I guess, at some point. Squid?
Absolutely.
I guess I'll see you on Thursday night.
See you Thursday night, We're in the Easter Shield circuit.
That's great. And keep up the great work, guys.
Okay.
Okay, and anyway,
right.
thanks,
Mac.
for joining us.
Yep.
Okay.